There was a professor who said to one pile of students, make 100 vases, and he said to the other one, just make the best vase you can. The ones that made hundreds of vases were able to do better because they were able to learn from each one of their comics. It's like with these videos. When I first started these videos, I was like this, right, in the middle of the screen. And it was like, I didn't know, because I was just like, oh, this looks like a good composition. I'm in the middle of the screen. But right now, you're watching this video, half of my face is cut off by the speed drawing.
If you're up for a good laugh, be sure to check out my comics on Instagram at JMan's Comic Book Adventures.
All right, lads and ladettes. Today, I'm going to be talking about how artists need deadlines, because this is something I've struggled with for so long. And I finally reached the conclusion that I think the best way to operate with things when you're creating art is to have deadlines. Because this is going to tie into another topic I'm going to talk about when there's practice and performance, right? I think when you're just sketching and like whatever, you should have fun and be free. But when it comes to you creating projects, I feel as though having a deadline is very beneficial, because what it does is it urges you to take action on the thing that you want to do. And that way it actually gets done. Whereas if you don't have a deadline, there's a tendency to sort of overthink about things and saying, should I do this thing with the project, or should I start another way with the project? And then in that way is either you don't take any action at all, or you just take very little actions towards completing a project. A case in point with my comic, it was when I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna put out a comic. That there in that moment, that day was a deadline, and I just started scrawling together my first ever comic. And then from there, like, it went on and on. And it's like, right now I have deadlines with my comic. This is not for my comic, this is for my studying, which is a kind of self-imposed habit. You could say it's a daily deadline to do a certain amount of studying. But with my comic, my deadline at the moment is to do 3 comics every week. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, do 3 comics every single week. By the time you see this video, it's going to be a daily comic. So I make a comic every single day. And the reason why I do that is because having that self-imposed deadline forces me to act, or forces me to do something and put something out there into the world, instead of overthinking and overanalyzing and not acting. You learn from actually putting something out there and then getting that feedback loop back. Whereas if you don't do something, or if you don't complete a project and you don't finish a project, you become someone that's very good at starting projects, but not someone that's very good at finishing projects. And also you can become someone that's not very good at taking feedback, which is something I suffered from before as well, is that because I wasn't finishing projects, they became these baby projects to me. And then I couldn't take the criticism that people would give me about the stuff that I was making, all because I didn't have the deadline. And it's like, if you don't have a deadline, you can't build like a big body of work, because you're taking so long to complete these projects that you have a scattered project there, scattered project over in another place, and you can't look back on a massive body of work that makes you proud, and it's something that you can show other people and they can say, oh, this guy's skillful, oh, this guy, I like this guy's stuff. Like, I was looking at my Instagram page the other day and seeing, wow, I'm actually starting to have comics now. Like, I was looking at it and I was like, oh, I've got over 20 comics now. It actually looks like I have a page of comics. Before, it was just 2 or 3 comics, and anyone could look at that page and just say, oh, he's just done 2 or 3 comics. But now that I've got over 20, it's like, wow, I can say, wow, I've actually got some comics. I can actually say it with my chest out, and I can say it with some confidence. I make comics because I've done it a few times now. And then when it's 100 comics, you're like, whoa, I've done 100 comics, 200 comics. And it's all because you've built these deadlines that feed into your process and like force you to make decisions and force you to create. But that's the important thing, is just always being in the mindset of being able to of creating something and not being scared. Because I noticed now, when I first started doing comics, there was this it was this weird curve. Like, at first there was this excitement because it's a new thing. So my first comic, I was really excited. The second one, I was pretty excited too. But as I did like 3 or 4 comics, suddenly this thing, and I think there's this guy, who talks about this, and in the War of Art, I forgot the guy's name who writes the War of Art, but he talks about this thing called resistance. And resistance is this force that stops you from creating. You feel it and you don't want to create. I reckon like after 4 or 5 comics, I started feeling this ever-present resistance, because it's now like, now I have to stick up to this deadline. Now I have to complete a comic within the day that I set for it. And it was like this resistance is building. I feel as though now, because I'm acting on my deadlines and stuff like that, I'm getting better at combating resistance, even though it's there at times. And sometimes I wake up at the start of the day and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do for the comic? How am I going to make this comic work? How am I going to finish it on time? I force myself to do it. I say, look, you have 3 or 4 hours, maybe sometimes you have 2, sometimes you have 1 hour. Make something within that time. Set a strict amount of time that you're meant to do something and produce it in that amount of time. Instead of having this arduous, like long sort of, I'm gonna set myself up to do this for months and months so I can make my beautiful masterpiece. No, have strict time restraints for making things. And then that way you can produce more things. And once you produce more things, in theory, you're able to see and analyze, wow, this works, that doesn't work. And then that's the way you can actually become better. It's like the thing about the class where there was a professor who said to one pile of students, make 100 vases. And he said to the other one, just make the best vase you can. The ones that made hundreds of vases were able to do better because they were able to learn from each one of their comics. It's like with these videos. When I first started these videos, I was like this, right? In the middle of the screen. And it was like, I didn't know, because I was just like, oh, this looks like a good composition. I'm in the middle of the screen. But right now you're watching this video, half of my face is cut off by the speed drawing. And it wasn't until I actually went out there and tried, because again, it's like, that seems obvious now. It's like, where's the speed drawing gonna go? But it isn't super obvious, because I didn't realize at the time, all of my speed drawing videos are square, because they're made for Instagram. Like Instagram puts you into this square format. Now, if it was a normal one and it was like a rectangle, I could put my little voiceover thing that you're seeing right now in a corner, and that works because it's like a rectangle and a rectangle. But when you have a square and a rectangle, things get weird, because you want people to see the drawing, right? But you want people to see you. So it was like, how do I get across this? I'm like, okay, after making like 4 or 5 videos of this, and like you'll see in the initial videos I did on this channel, it looks kind of weird. After doing it a few times like that, I suddenly realized that maybe the best way of going about this is like me standing off to the side. You see the speed drawing on this side and you see me on this side, and it's like you see both, and it's like a sort of cool format. But it only came from me doing quite a few comics. Another problem I had with my comics, which is how deadlines helped it, was that I didn't know how to do straight lines. I didn't know how to do straight lines on Procreate. At the time, like, some people will be like, oh, just look up a tutorial. But the problem is with certain people, and you might be like me, we get into this thing of where we're like, we try to look up every single tutorial on a thing to learn how to do it completely, like to learn how to do it really, really well before we actually take action on the thing that we need to do. And then when you do that, you don't actually remember all of the things you watched, because like you're watching this thing, you're following on, you might actually do it in the program, but you haven't actually implemented it in a piece of work. Because I had deadlines, right? I struggled with like 4 or 5, I think 6 comics I struggled with before I got Brad Coleborough's courses actually. I'll link them in the description below. His courses are really great. They're the reason why I've got these X's here, because these X's represent every single time I go through one of his lessons for a certain amount of time, right? So I'll link them down below. Check them out, right? They're really cool, right? And like, while making the comic on my deadline that I set for myself, I went through his courses, and it's like, oh, he says to do this in this course. Let me remember to do that while I'm making my comic. And like each time in my comic, I know that, wow, to make perfectly straight lines in Procreate, you hold it for the crick shape, right? And then if you put your finger on there, you can do some other things as well. So it's like, I just feel like once you have these deadlines in place, it forces you to act, and it forces you to learn. Whereas if you kind of like make if you kind of create without deadlines, you think you're learning so much sometimes. You think you're like, oh, I'm learning so much because I'm taking my time. But in reality, a lot of that stuff might just be head knowledge and theory and knowing of how to do something instead of knowing how to execute on something. Having deadlines and finishing projects teaches you how to execute and like put the things you practice into practice. That's the power of having a deadline. And I just feel like as I look back on my comics and my Instagram page, and you're seeing it now, you can go over to my comics at J-Man Comics Adventures, J-Man's Comic Adventures. Go over there and you can see it. You can see like, oh, dude, this guy's got like something. He started from this really screwed up piece of paper, doing an ink drawing, right? To now he's doing stuff on Procreate. He's doing stuff for Inktober. He's done all of this different things. Like, you can see all of this stuff that I've done, and it's because I just said, no, I'm gonna do it differently this time. Instead of trying to create a masterpiece, instead of trying to create a big project that will put me on the map, I'm gonna set deadlines for myself that I can do frequently, and that way I build up a body of work. I show up, people see me, and they respect me in this sort of thing, and that's how I can build a foundation for a really great career. My name has been, it's like my name changed. My name is Joseph, and this is London Lad in Lost in Asia, and I really don't know how to end this video.